When I was watching the border war, the biggest conclusion that I came away with is college football is better when Missouri and Kansas play against each other. And this is their first ever matchup since 2011. And that's a shame because these teams have met 128 times prior. There is pure hatred between these two schools. And, Eli Drinkwitz was asked about the rivalry in the offseason, and he said something that really caught people off guard. He said, quote, "People have died in this rivalry." So let's do a quick history lesson here before we start talking about the nitty-gritty of the game, because there's a lot of substance in this game that people don't know. Why is it called the Border War? Well, in the 1850s during the Civil War, between these two states, Missouri, Confederate state, Kansas, Union state, hundreds of people died. You talk about the Lawrence Massacre. Ever heard of that? Well, that was when 400 Missourians went and destroyed homes, businesses, men and children were murdered. And this is during this war, during this border war, by the way. The sacking of Lawrence in 1856 as well. As a matter of fact, these two mascot names, the Tigers, Missouri Tigers, were developed because a military group was named the Columbia Tigers to protect civilians after the Centralia Massacre, which also killed a bunch of people. You can go and look it up. Jayhawkers were also people that ransacked towns across the Missouri border. So that's how those two mascots came about. Fun fact. So this crazy war that lasted forever. Eli Drinkwitz wasn't lying, by the way. When it ended, these two states still hated each other. So, how do you resolve this hatred? Go play a college football game. Why not? So in 1891, the first ever Kansas-Missouri football game was played. And, man, people don't understand. The start of Kansas and Missouri, that rivalry, is so old that this was only 25 years after the war had ended. The Civil War had ended and all the massacres between those two states. So there's still grueling tribal hatred between these two states, these two cultures, these two schools that were derived from these two cultures. So that being said, they played 128 times. The only year they didn't play was 1918. From 1891 to 2011. They played every single year, and then, long story short, a bunch of political BS and corporate nanobots took the game away. And here we have it. And that's a shame, because I'll say, if I was college football commissioner, that game is not going away. There is going to be a mandatory requirement that Kansas and Missouri have to play every year, because there is just too much history there. It produced so many great memories. 58-54 all-time series, super competitive. The 2007 top 5 matchup, crazy season by the way, 36-28 game, winner gets in the Big 12 championship. 2008, there's so many wild matchups in this. Chase Daniel, that '07 Kansas team was awesome. So, these teams should be forced to play every single year. And also, side note, let the fans rush the field. Come on. I mean, look, I get it. Sometimes field rushing can be too much. But when you have that much animosity and that much hatred towards each other, and you have to bottle it in and not play for 15 years, come on. That's a huge moment for Missouri. And, I talked about all the stuff surrounding it, the tribalism, the history. So Drinkwitz is right. People died in this rivalry. He was not lying. But what a heck of a football game in itself. I mean, this was absolutely back and forth. I think both of these teams are criminally underrated from just a basis of a top 25 ranking. The model has both of these teams in the top 25. Missouri in the top 15 coming into this game. So let's talk about KU. Even though they lost this game, unfortunate, but with Jalen Daniels healthy, Kansas has a chance to win the Big 12. I mean, they looked very good these first couple weeks. 18 of 30, 223 yards, 3 touchdowns. He made some crazy good plays. I mean, there's only so much hero ball you can play there because, let's be real, the run game, which has been great for Kansas these last few years, was absent. The receivers were good. They had some drops. The defense could not get a stop, could not stop a leaf if its life depended on it. And this was also the best, most talented team that Kansas is going to play all year. So I think even though Kansas lost this game, there are still a lot of positives you can take from this. And let's pivot. On the note of Missouri, people don't realize, I don't think, how down the top of the SEC is. People also don't realize how good the bottom of the SEC is. I mean, after watching Bama against Florida State, Florida tonight against South Florida, Texas, questions under center, Georgia looked a little bit rusty against Austin Peay. There's a lot of questions in this league right now as to who is going to overtake that number one spot. And I'm not saying Missouri is the odds-on favorite. No. But I'm saying if you're a Missouri fan, I think you should be very encouraged by this performance. 28-13 on first downs. 28 Missouri, 13 Kansas. 595 to 226 in total yards. And, I'm not sure if the 2024 Missouri team would have won a game like this because I think, that defense was really solid. They had a lot of returning guys, but the pop at points lacked. Against Alabama, you saw they got shut out 34-0. Against Texas A&M last year, A&M was getting explosives out the wazoo. Missouri couldn't keep up. They had to win a certain type of way. This Missouri team has all of the pop in the world. Again, 595 total yards. And they won this game in every facet, pretty much. 47 carries as a team, identity stat right here. 261 yards, 5.6 yards per carry between Hardy and Roberts. That is a really good dynamic duo at running back. Bo Pribula, a lot of questions for him coming into the season. It was neck and neck, him and Sam Horn, for that starting job. 30 of 39, 334 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's looked excellent to start out the season. And I get it. A bunch of other SEC teams, there's been a lot of cupcakes that have been played, you could say. But a bunch of other SEC teams have looked shaky at QB. You can't say the same about Missouri. Kevin Coleman Jr., what a get for Drinkwitz and that staff. Because Kevin Coleman, I talked about this when I previewed Missouri in the preseason. Michael Van Buren, Mississippi State's quarterback last year, who Kevin Coleman was at prior to Missouri, his passer rating went up from an 81 to a 110 when targeting Kevin Coleman Jr. last year. So efficiency just, bam, out the wazoo. He had a clutch fourth down grab that he held on to that not a lot of receivers would have held on to. 10 catches, 126 yards. He was huge for them. And, Missouri last year was 10th in the SEC in points per game. They won 10 games in spite, kind of compensating for that offense. Drinkwitz and that staff probably knew that. They went out and got people like Ahmad Hardy, who had 130-plus rushing yards today. You get people like Kevin Coleman. You get people like Bo Pribula, who's an absolute dual threat. They fix those issues. And that defense, that nucleus returns. They return top 10 in the FBS in returning production defensively with the defensive coordinator who's now in year 2. So this team is underratedly very sneaky complete because, I talked about the defense. I want to put this into perspective because everything that Missouri did offensively, I don't even think it's the best part of what they did. Kansas, 492 rushing yards coming into the season. Last year, they were top 5 amongst Power 4 teams in rushing yards per game. So really dynamic rushing attack. 19 carries for 3 yards. 3 yards against Missouri. So, not only is this a huge win for Missouri emotionally, because you won the border war, and not a lot of people know this, and you will know after watching this video, there is some serious, deep hatred between those two schools that is absolutely tribal, that goes back to the Civil War days. And a lot of people got to see it. And college football is better when people get to see this type of rivalry. And with the top of the SEC down, I think Missouri is a legitimately underrated threat that not a lot of people are talking about, because they can win a game in a lot of different ways. With Bo Prabula, with that rushing attack, with that front seven, man. That front seven came to play. So watch out for Missouri this year.